are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Eye on the Prize, Recess's Roots in Creating a Foundation for Academic Success. This webinar is brought to you through a partnership between the Texas Department of State Health Services School Health Program and the Texas Association for Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance. Good morning. My name is Anita Wheeler. I'm the School Health Coordinator at the Department of State Health Services as well as the School Nurse Consultant. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Tayford and Diana for collaborating with us on this project. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so that you as a participant can participate in today's event. This is just an overview of the control panels to ensure that everyone has a good grounding on how to use the tools in GoToWebinar. We have taken a screenshot of an example of the attendee interface. You should see something that looks like this on your computer desktop in the upper right-hand corner, this here. If you're not seeing the full control panel, click the arrow in the orange box, and this should actually show the full control panel. You are listening in your computer's speaker system by default. If you would prefer to join over the phone, just select telephone in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. Please consider clicking the audio settings link to ensure everything is working properly. So there's a place where you can check to make sure that you can hear properly. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presentations by typing your questions into the question pane of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation, and we will collect these and address them during the question and answer portion at the end of today's webinar. Everyone's phone line and computer microphone are in mute to cut down on background noises. If technical difficulties occur, send a question through the question box or just call the toll-free number you see on the screen. GoToWebinar's live technical support will be available to help you. This is our fourth webinar in partnership with Tayford, and we are proud to work alongside Dr. Diana Everett, Tayford's Executive Director, and Dr. Debbie Ray, Tayford's past president on this webinar series about recess. Now I would like to take some time to introduce Dr. Diana Everett. As I mentioned, Diana is the Executive Director for Texas Association for Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance. Prior to joining Tayford in 1999, Dr. Everett was the Executive Director for the National Association for Girls and Women in Sports. She's a lifelong Texan, holds a doctorate in sports administration from Texas Women's University, a master's in physical education from Baylor University, and a bachelor's in physical education from the University of Texas at Arlington. Prior to moving into association management in 1995, she taught physical education, health, and biology. She also coached for 11 years at various high schools in Texas. Without further ado, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Dr. Everett so she can say a few words. Diana?
Thank you, Anita. Tayford greatly values this partnership with DSHS, and for today's webinar, I'm privileged to introduce Dr. Jim Chadwell and Dr. Deborah Ray. Dr. Chadwell earned a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science, a Master's in School Administration, and a Doctorate in Educational Leadership from Texas Christian University in Fort Worth. He joined Eagle Mountain Saginaw ISD as superintendent in December of 2010. Prior to becoming superintendent, he was a teacher, coach, high school principal, and executive director for elementary and secondary instruction in Northwest ISD. He taught advanced placement psychology, sociology, and German. His teaching experiences also include an internship and Fulbright scholarship in Germany. He served as deputy superintendent for Grapevine Colleyville ISD prior to coming to Eagle Mountain Saginaw ISD. Dr. Chadwell's honors include being selected as High School Principal of the Year by the Texas Association of Secondary School Principals, as Texas Educational Theater Association Administrator of the Year, and as Career and Technology Association of Texas Area 2 Administrator of the Year. Last but not least, he has a lifetime membership in the Texas PTA. Ray is a full professor and Associate Dean of Research and Health Sciences at Texas Christian University in Fort Worth, Texas. She taught physical education and coached in the public schools for 12 years prior to earning her doctorate in pedagogy and sports exercise psychology. She has published over 40 peer-reviewed articles and 14 books on physical activity, eating disorders in adolescents. Her primary emphasis is on diversity, behavior change, and motivation. She has presented at over 250 different local, regional, national, and international conferences. She has been an invited speaker on behavior change, motivation, and eating disorders, and she develops and trains physical education teachers at in-service trainings on developmentally appropriate curriculum, which spans across Texas, Iowa, and Missouri. Please join me in welcoming both Dr. Chadwell and Dr. Ray.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here with the group today, and especially with this great partnership between TDSH and Tayford as we move through. So at this point, I would like to start the presentation, and then Dr. Chadwell will come in and speak on his part, and then I'll come back and finish up on some results. But I do want to say to begin that we're focused more today on how schools can begin to use recess and physical education to their benefit with their academic rigor, more so than we are about the LINK project itself. So as I get started, this is who I am, and I'm going to begin with our first part, which is why recess and a quality physical education program are integral to academic achievement. And so some of these things you probably either already know or it's a reminder to you, but physical education and recess, especially in young kids through even middle school, they're wired to move and need to move. And the problem that we've had over the past few years is that we've taken recess out specifically, and sometimes we've even tried to maneuver around physical education in order to get more content time in throughout the day. And it has been detrimental to our academic success in many ways. We also know through the CDC that they have really gone on a campaign lately to say we need to get out of our chairs because sitting is the #1 contributor to chronic disease, and we know that just 1 hour of sitting is equivalent to 2 smoked cigarettes. This is highly detrimental to our young kids and adolescent populations, much less what it's doing to our adult populations. We've become such a sedentary society today. We also know through numerous neurological type research that children and adults who are active at least 30 to 60 minutes a day at least 60% of their maximum energy level, when they're active like this, you see on the left-hand side that 30 minutes of active time daily can produce nice brain neurological firing to create many, many highways that we have that create the cognitive ability that we have. But what we see over a nine-month period, this lower left individual who, after 9 months of more sedentary behavior, you can see that the brain has really pretty much fallen asleep and does not encounter the academic rigor that we might put into place. Even if it's there, the ability to take it in is not there. Whereas an individual who's had more active time throughout the day, or at least 30 minutes in a day, has been able to have a vibrant brain scan that you see there. One thing that you might not know, I don't know if you do or not, but some of the research that's out there today talks about our ADHD population and how a lot of what's happened with the growing number of ADHD diagnoses that we have is because of our lack of outdoor possibilities. And when some people talk about it, they talk about the indoors being driven or firing the sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight or flight response. And if created over the chronic time period, let's say day after day after day of sitting in a classroom with no outdoor exposure, that sympathetic nervous system is responding chronically across time. When individuals are able to go outside and be part of nature, the parasympathetic nervous system is able to kick in, which brings on a relaxed and less anxious state for individuals. If you just picture yourself in this situation, if you're out staring off at a lake or at an ocean or in the mountains, you hear wind chimes or you see birds flying around, it relaxes you more. It gives you that peace of mind. Whereas inside, it can create the stress that comes on. And what we're finding today is that the more indoors we are, the more target focused we are, especially with all the technology we have going on right now, the brain cannot focus and unfocus between nature and the indoors. And so the brain gets stuck, and when it does, it creates more of the sympathetic nervous response state, which ultimately creates the ADHD that we have in many of our kids today. At least that's the direction they're headed with seeing it in the research. We also see that when play is available, you'll see on the right-hand side that there are lots of positive things that happen from play being available for individuals, whereas when play is missing, you see a lot of what we have in our population today, which is this rise in narcissism, extrinsic control, meaning that students today are not driving themselves, but they're expecting others to help them to know what to do, how to function, what the answer is. And what just drives me crazy as an associate dean working with students on a regular basis is they just want to know, what do I need to do in order to pass a test? Or what do I need to do in order to create the project that you will give me an A on? And this is the kind of thing that is driving me crazy, is that we've got an adult population coming up that's overly anxious, overly stressed out, has internal struggles beyond belief. They want others to tell them what to do, and I guess the worst part is that they don't want to do things if it doesn't pay a lot. They want to, only do something that's worth their energy level to get paid for it. And so what play can bring back is a lot of the empathy and the calming response and peace with self and understanding who you are, the self-control, and those are the things that we're really looking for in kids. So as I move forward, we think about how can this happen in schools? How can we get to a point where we've taken recess and physical education away from kids? Music, art, all the things that are really important to the nurturing of children today. How do we get there? And so I'm going to turn the call now over to Dr. Chadwell, who's going to help us answer why recess should not drop off a school's already full.
Good. Thank you, Debbie. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, a little disclosure that I'm on the road. My Link colleagues know that, so if I cut out, y'all will just let me know that I am so we can adjust. But again, my name is Jim Chadwell. My school district, Eagle Mountain Saginaw ISD, is in the far north part of Fort Worth. We're a school district of 19,600. We have 26 schools, 15 of which are elementary schools. So working a few years ago with Dr. Ray approached us about the LINK project, and over a period of time we decided that we would go that direction, and just were very excited about getting that started. But one of the keys was to start small and to make sure we built forward, making sure the capacity was there prior to the program implementation. And so we started with Eagle Mountain Elementary. This is a school of approximately 650 students in the Eagle Mountain Lake area. And this school, we started last year with K-1. And this was just very exciting to see all of the positive results last year. Just on a qualitative experience I had was when I observed on a pretty regular basis of coming through, of just seeing behavior patterns that were far different than what I saw in our other elementary schools and in that very school just a year prior. We saw in K1 that these students started to own their behavior much more strongly. We saw them able to refocus on learning tasks and go from learning task to learning task without getting defocused. Just an example of that is when you follow a group of LINK kids from the playground into the classroom, and if you follow the last kid, by the time you get into the classroom, first of all, you'll notice things, that kids don't walk back in rows, that kids are owning their behaviors of what they need to do, get a drink of water or not. There's not lining up 22 kids whether they want water or not or go to the restroom or not. They are able to control that behavior. Once you get back in the classroom, kids are absolutely engaged within seconds, which sounds like that's hard to believe if those of us that have been in a lot of kindergarten and first grade classrooms, but it's true, and it happens every day on a consistent basis. And we have seen that mainly because of the students' ability to be able to get out throughout the day and to be able to get their energy out, but also start to use some critical thinking skills and some creativity skills that they had abandoned when recess may have been short, like 20 minutes or even 25 minutes, and now it's broken up through the day. So our parents have reacted strongly, positively to this. I have yet to field one negative comment today from the 4 schools we have involved. Or last year with Eagle Mountain Elementary, everything has been positive. And in most cases, what people will say is it just makes sense, it's intuitive. And although it's intuitive, like a lot of things that seem simple, it's not simple at all. And so I know Dr. Ray will get into that aspect of it. So as we saw these targets that Dr. Ray will go over the specific research later, we saw that we want to expand to more schools. And so we determined to go from K1 to K1-2 at Eagle Mountain Elementary. Then we added 3 other schools on. All of our schools have different demographic makeups, from economic disadvantage to different demographic, racial profiles. And all of the schools are getting very similar results at this point. We did an elective process where principals had to request to be added as a LINK school. We had more requests than ability to add on, because again, we want to do it right the first time. And so we added 3 additional schools that will have K1. Our long-term goal is that all 15 elementary schools and all future elementary schools in our school district, because we're growing by about 1 middle elementary every 3 to 5 years, will have this program, and a build-out will be at minimum at K-5. And so to do that, we have to have capacity. And so TCU has been wonderful with that, Dr. Ray specifically, a LINK coordinator. And our LINK coordinator is a key to this whole process because she is able to get the research from TCU and work hand in hand with them, but also to be embedded. I will not say this is required, and not all school districts are doing this, but in my case, or our case, we want to expand to all 15 schools, and we want this to be long-lasting, my tenure in the school district or anyone's. And in order to do that, we need to provide the support for our teachers. The training that was done for our teachers this year, our 3 additional schools, again, very positive responses we've had from that. Other factors that affect adding recess to the day, and this is part of the part that always surprises people, and again becomes intuitive once you think about it. How do you cut time and add quality? So like many states, we have so many minutes that we have to teach certain content areas, and certainly you have you need time in order to teach certain content areas, and that's always a stressor. Is how do I give up time to recess yet be able to teach writing and reading and so forth? And as Dr. Ray worked with teachers, as we've often said, it's about quality, not quantity. And we see that in all kinds of aspects of life. And so although we were spending a lot of time, the quality had dipped. And it wasn't about the quality of instruction in terms of best practices. It was physically the kids' inability to focus for long periods of time. No matter how engaging the instruction was, no matter how hard the teacher worked in order to have engaging lessons, the reality is when you have recess in the morning or recess in the far afternoon, and you've been sitting in a classroom for 3 hours, no matter how many times you move, you need to get outside, what Dr. Ray mentioned earlier. You need to get out. You need to be able to get your hands dirty. You need to play with your friends, and you need to disengage. So part of unstructured play or recess is the ability for kids to disengage from the academic, but they re-engage in other creative ways. And so you'll see all kinds of things. There's no structured play on the playground. They create their structure where they play a ball game or whether they have some make-believe game. We have kids that dig for dinosaur bones. We have all kinds of different things, and it changes every recess. And so, again, as we work with teachers, that was their greatest fear, is how do I give up this content time and have the quality? Well, what they found is exactly what's intuitive, is that the kids were able to stay focused for longer periods of time and were able to re-engage. Any of us that have been in elementary classrooms, they know 10 to 15 minutes before recess, when you have one a day, the kids are incredibly anxious because they want to go to recess. They can't wait to go to recess, and it's really hard to keep the kids focused. Then you go to recess, they have a good time, and when they come back, it's hard to get them back in the classroom. They'll do every delay tactic. It's like, like my daughter not wanting to go to sleep at night. She needs a drink of water. She needs to go to the restroom. Can you tell me a story? Anything to stop doing what we want them to do. And part of that's just a biological nature of the kids are not done. They still have this anxiety and their energy built up in them. What we saw after this was the time before recess. If you walk in 2 minutes before a kid is going, or 1 minute before a kid's going to recess, you will see virtually no activity that you know that they're about to go to recess, because they're going to have 4. And so this is not that big of a deal because they're going to have 4. And likewise, at the end of the time, when they come back, there's not the anxiety that you often see as well, because they also, again, know that they're going to have another recess and they've had their needs met. And so that's a key. The other element is we've had to adjust our curriculum, and this is a key element. It's not that we have changed the scope and sequence of what we teach, or that we've reduced the number of what you call TEKS in our state, Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, curriculum areas that we're required to teach. We have not reduced them, but we also have to restructure them around what makes in the day. Dr. Ray has mentioned several times is that what you've seen in many schools is they teach math early in the morning, and that's a requirement in some school districts because they know kids typically are more engaged in the morning. Well, that's not the case in Link schools. Kids remain engaged all the day, so you can teach math in the afternoon or in the middle of the day or after lunch or before lunch. It's not an issue because we're paying attention to the cognitive needs of the kids. The last thing I'll mention here are the pitfalls and challenges that happen. First of all, communication. Communication is the key. It has to be early and often, starting with your staff. If your staff do not know what you're doing, then certainly the parents won't know, because when they talk to teachers and the teachers show a level of anxiety or misunderstanding, that will pervade with parents, and so that's the key. High organization. The whole concept of chaos creates stress. If we're able to structure and for it to be very clear what we're doing, then that high organization produces the structure that is needed in order to implement. Next is training of professional staff. This is a key, and it's a non-negotiable. It is very important that all staff are fully trained. Many people will say this is easy. Add 4 15-minute recess, you're done. But we know clearly that it's not just about recess, it's also about students' behavior. So character education is linked very closely in this program, but also understanding why all of this works and not just trying to throw recess. So people that are going to do copycat and we're going to add recess, then the reality is they're probably going to have failure because the staff is not going to be fully trained and they're not acknowledging the complexity of it. A collaborative environment. In this, I really do not believe that Link be highly successful without a collaborative teacher environment. First of all, teachers have to plan together, work together. They're not just taking kids out on their own, they're taking them out by grade level. Just a side note, this is also important for teachers to go out. They need breaks too, and not breaks just to go make phone calls or to check email, but to be outside and to disengage for a few minutes, particularly at the elementary level where teachers are not in control of their schedules. They literally can't leave the room to go to the restroom without someone covering them. The ability to have this time out watching kids, but also just being able to talk, it produces and supports this collaborative environment that also supports their own mental health. The next area is research. We feel like this is the key, and the reason why this was ideal working with TCU. It's not about how we feel that this is good. We need to see that it works. And so there have to be results, because in the end, if this school's performance drops as a result of Link, then we all know we're not going to do it anymore. So it's very important that we ensure that it's properly implemented, it's properly measured, and the connection is made between the Link program, the Link project, and the results that we're getting. finally is a commitment of all stakeholders. Education is ridden with implementing new programs and then dropping those programs after initial failures or bumps in the roads. And so this had to be a commitment of stakeholders, starting with our school board, all of our administration, our campus leadership, and also our teachers. Our teachers were at the table when we implemented at all of our schools. I believe our biggest stressor is to come when the standard is district-wide, and if there are campuses, the leadership or staff are resistant, it may be more difficult in those areas. So we are encouraging our teachers to come and see what's happening, because teachers, all teachers, if they see the results, their initial concerns will be put to the side, because in the end, they want kids to be successful. And if they think that it won't work, yet they see it working in their colleagues' classrooms and neighboring schools only a few miles away, then they'll believe as well. So again, that collaborative environment is something we need to do district-wide.
Thanks, Dr. Chadwell. Yes, you know, the collaboration between Eagle Mountain Saginaw, Dr. Chadwell, the principals, myself, and our team have been just enormous. And it really does make a difference between teachers who don't believe in going outside. A lot of times that's part of the problem, as well as you've got administrators sometimes that are so focused on the outcomes, and I'm talking, you know, it could be principals, it could be curriculum instruction directors, that it's not that they don't want to bring in recess. They do believe in it, but it's very hard to do that when you're trying to get the outcome to be satisfactory. And so I really appreciate all that you've brought to the table today, Dr. Chadwell, from your perspective and how you see it in your district. I wanted to just go through some of these results with you to show that how recess and physical education can work in the schools, and that it really shows that you can see more growth and outcome-driven results that are positive for schools who are embracing even 1 or 2 recesses, more than, you know, trying to cut it out and saying, well, we're going to go more content. And along this realm, I also want to say, just as a caveat before I start on the results, that a lot of times we feel if we do the recess piece that in the end we're losing content time. And I'll come back and talk about this more. Dr. Chadwell can talk about this more at the end if you want. But the bottom line is that we're actually gaining content time, not losing content time by putting this in. So you can see up here that our first cohort started last year with Brown, Gilbert, and Townsville and Eagle Mountain Elementary. And all 4 of these schools are now K through 2 this year. They'll be K through 3 next year. In the cohort 1 results, one of the things that we measured, this is a 1-year period of time. You'll see that the body mass index results, which is something that's pretty concerning to people in Texas and other states who have high overweight, obese rates, our BMI scores in 1 year's time for intervention, which is the blue line right across here, actually stabilized, where our control schools went up from about a 16.8 to 17.6 average for the kids. Now, you may say, well, that's not a whole lot of change. It's significantly different between the 2 groups. But what's amazing to me is this is K and 1 kids, and we're already seeing control schools, the growth rate on pounds to their height, whereas our group is stable. And that is a huge result for us. You can see it by gender in that this is our kinder group, and our control group is definitely different from our, well, they're not different from our intervention group in the kinders. Even though there is a gap, it's not a major gap. But for our first grade kids, it is a significant difference. And you can see that our first grade kids are actually getting better in their height-weight ratio versus our control school kids. So this was a huge result for us in 1 year. We continue to collect this data on our kids as they go from K to 1, 1 to 2, and so forth. And we'll continue to show results as we see those. The next result is off task by kinder and first grade. And I know there are a lot of lines on here, but if you'll follow the blue lines versus the red lines, these are male versus female in the kinder cohort. And what you'll see with them, if you follow the blue lines first, is here is our kinder boys in the intervention group, and here are the boys in our control group. Here are the girls in the intervention group, and here are the girls in the control group. What you see is our boys are actually meeting the girls down here at somewhere around 24–25% off-task behavior, where they started at 50 to 52% before they got started there. Our control schools are not changing much at all with off-task behaviors. Why is this important? Is because from a focus perspective, our intervention kids are actually focusing more when they're in the classroom, which is what Dr. Chadwell talked about, which means we're getting more done in the classroom when we're there than our control schools. Another thing is that we've tried, and I know you all have, you've tried to do things that will help your kids be more focused by doing more movement in the classroom. If you start putting recess in your schedules, please do not try to keep a lot of movement time in your classrooms as well. This is where an off-task or an off-balance comes into play, because you'll continue to see kids who are more ADHD if you continue to have them move in the classroom. What you want to be able to do is take them to recess, come back, settle them in, and let them go back to focus on tasks at the desk. They don't have to have a lot of movement around after you implement 1 to 2 recesses on a daily basis. Here's first grade, and you can see that they are changing even more than our kinder group. And again, these are significant changes, but our boys and girls in control schools are not changing much. Our intervention schools are dropping very nicely with off-task behaviors. And in fact, we're getting close in the girls to be down around 20% in the off-task. When we look at what we're doing with positive action, which is our character curriculum, you'll see that we looked at empathy, and we also looked at bullying. And so from the empathy perspective, we are focused on creating a more empathetic environment. You'll see that in kindergarten, remember, they're very me-focused, and you can see that there's not much change in these kids from an empathetic perspective. Although, even though that's the case that's showing on paper, there are numerous stories that are coming from the kinder teachers that talk differently, that talk about how sensitive they are when they go home and how they want to help their parents more around the house, and that they have friends that they know don't have as much as they do, and they want to offer up different things to them. For example, one child found a quarter on the kindergartner found a quarter on the playground and said, I want to give this quarter to this other little child because that individual doesn't have as much, and this is a happy birthday from me to him. And those kind of things are happening, even though it may not be showing on the scale right now, it's showing overall. With the first grade, though, we are seeing significant change in empathy. That's what we want to see. We want to see that our kids, as they get older, are becoming more empathetic. And so far, the results are looking good in that perspective. Now, keep in mind, these first graders have not had recess like they had this past year. They haven't had recess like this before. This was a first year for them, just as it was a first year for kinder. I'm going to be excited to see what happens when we have recess in a second year. How does this affect the overall capacity of these kids? From a bullying perspective, we are seeing in our kindergarten kids, we see less bullying in our intervention kids, and it's significantly different from our first grade. We did not get a lot of change in bullying perspective in our first grade group. We're seeing that the intervention group was raising up just as the control group. They're not significantly different, but you can see that they actually started in a higher bullying capacity than the control groups at that point. We are keeping a good eye on this, and we're seeing if this is going to go down as a result of the accumulative effect. This one is an interesting one, and Dr. Chadwell talked a little bit about it, but we're measuring something called attentional fatigue, which is, can we teach things throughout the day, like math, science, English language arts, or do we need to really focus on important material in the mornings and keep more of our special type things and technology and library in the afternoons? And what we're finding is that these are our control schools, one control school and another control school, fall and spring. And here is our intervention school and intervention school, fall and spring. And what you see is that if this is baseline, the 0, our kids who are in the program in the control schools that did the attentional fatigue assessment, they got more tired and were less able to attend. It was significantly different for the intervention. They could not attend in the afternoons in the fall and spring. And you see it got worse in the spring than it was in the fall. With our intervention kids, they, from the get-go, just putting recess in the schools, began to attend in the fall and continued to attend in the spring. And this was morning to afternoon, so we did not get tired kids in the afternoons. They were able to do whatever content throughout the day. It didn't matter what that material might be. So that's a huge result as well. We also know that as a result of the play, and this is huge, we're seeing that our physical education classes are actually getting better skill response from having recess throughout the day. So the kids who are able to go out and play on their own unstructured are coming into the physical education environment and honing in on their mature skills much faster than they did previously. In fact, in many schools today, our physical education teachers are having to teach the same skill set that's not mature throughout the grade school year. So even in 5th grade, they're still teaching kids eye-hand coordination, eye-foot coordination that is not mature patterns. And we keep scratching our heads, why are we having to do that? It's because they're not playing on their own. When you start embracing play and structured physical education, you're going to see a much more rapid growth in both areas, but what you're also going to see is keen minds. These kids are sharp, and as they begin to develop these motor skills, these agility skills, strong coordinated skills, they also build confidence and they feel better about themselves, and they begin to work out problems on their own, which is huge for what you want in your schools today from an academic perspective. We are now in more schools, and you can see here we're in 14 schools this year. We're studying the same kinds of things out there, but I don't want to harbor on, where we're going and what we're doing with that. What I want to get to is, what are recess considerations that you need to think about? I just wanted to show you the results so that you have some good, solid evidence that bringing recess back to your schools is the right thing to do, and having physical education in your schools, having that dual paradigm, the physical education and the recess, is bringing back a huge difference in what your kids can do in the schools from an academic perspective. The recess considerations, though, as you can see here, is that teachers do need to be outside with the kids, not teacher aides or parents. We want the teachers out there, and as Dr. Chadwell mentioned, it's very, very important that these teachers get their time outside as well. Many of your teachers may say to you, well, we don't need to go outside. We don't want to go outside. We don't appreciate the outside. And if you support that, then what you're going to find is that your teachers are still burnt out at the end of the day. They're still exhausted. They're still angry in the afternoons. They still have issues with the emotional distress that goes with being in a classroom all day long, trying to switch from one thing to the next without many breaks, no time to go to the bathroom, no time to get water breaks or anything else. They need that time as much as the kids do. And so this is a way, if you were to implement 1 to 2 recesses a day, that you'd be able to get that. You also need to know that the teachers have to be able, they need to watch what's going on the playground. Just because it's unstructured doesn't mean that it's anything goes out there. It means that teachers need to be aware of what's on the playground, what's going on with the kids, and they still need to have rules. For example, on slides, you don't have kids going up the slide while kids are coming down the slide. You want to make sure that you have a rule about that. We did have a school that has 2 or 3 slides on the playground, and so the rule was made that kids can go down the slide on these two slides and up the slide on this slide. And you can make rules like that out there so that kids can be more responsible but still be able to do things in different ways that's more unstructured but not to the point of injury or unsafe environments. You also want to make sure that you maintain safe equipment and that you provide rules out there that will keep things safe. For example, you don't want kids climbing fences that are part of your public property, because doing that could tear down the lasting effect of those fences and cause you to have to build them again earlier than you would like to. So you want to make sure that you're not having them climb things that could be deteriorating the actual physical property that you have. But at the same time, if you have trees that are climbable that are part of, they've got good fall surfaces around them, then if a school district wants to embark on something like that, you can. But at the same time, you want to make sure that you've got a stable environment with your teachers and your kids, and that things are running appropriately before you start moving in other directions like that. And then you also need to have signals to exit the playground. You need to make sure that they're organized with how they do that on the front end. And as those organizational routines begin to take effect, you can start loosening up on those rules, and the kids can begin to just walk in on their own with teachers strategically placed going into the hallways and making sure that the kids come back in an orderly fashion. You also want to make sure that you don't have younger and older students out together, especially at first. The K kids just really don't know how to play with older kids very well. You might say, well, older kids are really good working with younger kids. Yeah, but you want unstructured play, and younger kids play differently than older kids. We don't want that play interrupted with older kids trying to tell younger kids how to play. So they need to be separated for that respect alone. And then it should be all grade level teachers go out at the same time. Not one or two go out now and 2 or 3 go out later. It needs to be everybody goes out at the same time. So what can you do right now to start implementing things like this if you're interested? Well, you need to have training on how to get teachers and administrators on board for wanting recess and physical education to work in the schools, to understand how character development needs to be part of this, and decide whether you want to go with something like we use, which is called positive action, or if you want to use something different. But what I would say is that if you want to do this, you want to launch it on your own, you need to have a cognitive development lesson, character development curriculum. You don't want just a philosophy with vocabulary on the walls or in newsletters. You want a lesson character building curriculum. And in doing so, Positive Action is the #1 character curriculum in the nation with What Works Clearinghouse, which is put together federally by the different research that's gone on out there. But no matter what you do, the teachers and administrators need training on how to implement something like this. If you're going elementary wide, K-5 or pre-K-5, you got a lot to consider with trying to implement 1 recess, much less 2 recesses. And as I've told Dr. Chadwell and I have had conversations about this, and any other district that I'm in, 2 recesses is about all you can put in. And you might ask the question, well, can we just put 1 30-minute recess in instead of 2? Here's what I'll tell you. No, that is not appropriate. You needed to have 1 in the morning and 1 in the afternoon if you want to put in 2. And the reason for that is because every time you put a recess in, as Dr. Chadwell talked about and as you saw in the results, what you see is that they become more focused, they've rebooted their mindset, they've gotten the highways, and neurologically they've fired off those neurons, and so now they're ready to sit down and learn. If you only have 1 30-minute, you better have whatever that impact content is that you want to have right after it. You have that one right after it, because otherwise the others are not going to do as well. And even if you do stuff inside, moving around, Go Noodle, fidgety little gimmicks that you can put at your desk, they're not working. The results that you saw, the control schools have all those things. They're doing all those things, and it's still not showing the same results as going outside for 15 minutes unstructured outdoor play will do plus the positive action piece. And then principal support is huge. You've got to have good principal support. If you don't, if you just decide as an administrator, maybe at an assistant superintendent level, but don't have the support of the principal, it's not going to go well, because that principal is not going to be there when you're trying to talk them off the ledge of, oh my gosh, I've got so much to do and it's not all coming together right now, because that usually happens at the beginning of a year. So all these things are part of it. I hope I've given you some good food for thought, and I hope Dr. Chadwell has given you good food for thought. But what I want to do now is I'm going to turn it back over to Anita to put some perspective, question and answer back in, and see what we can do to help you out.
Let me go ahead and continue again. Are there any examples from Texas schools where teachers have attempted to incorporate TEKS into recess or outdoor time?
Are there any time, okay, read that one more time. Are there any times what?
Do you have any examples from Texas schools where teachers have attempted to incorporate TEKS into recess or the outdoor time?
Well, I guess the answer I would give to that first is that unstructured outdoor play really should be unstructured outdoor play. To say that we're providing TEKS in there is saying we're becoming more structured, and I'm not for becoming more structured out there. This should be a time that they're able to take on whatever responsibility their bodies are requiring of them without others telling them what to do.
All right. This is a clarification question related to teachers going outside and not the aides. And the clarification is, should both teachers and instructional aides be outside with the students?
If they've got both, sure. And in fact, the aides can actually help in the hallways and bathrooms when they're going out to start, and the teachers can go on out if they've got both. But what we don't want, and let me clarify this, is we don't want somebody, a teacher or an aide, staying inside doing work with the children while recess is going on for everyone else. Everybody goes outside. We don't use the recess time for catch up on assessments, for catch up on testing, for catch up on, whatever it might be. Everybody goes outside for that recess.
Okay. Another question, what type of results are you seeing with older students, such as fourth graders?
Okay, this is really cool. So we have one school, I think you may have seen it on the PowerPoint, that's Chattanooga, Oklahoma. And they are doing pre-K through 6th grade. Now, just keep in mind, there are only 11 to 25 kids per grade level at the school. But we were just out there yesterday with 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, and they're doing great with play. First couple of days, they were like, okay, well, I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but then they got better at it. I want Dr. Chadwell to jump on, if he will, for a second and explain what's going on with the 2 recesses a day and the older kids for them as well.
Yes. Part of what happened after we had the link launch at Eagle Mountain Elementary is that there was a lot of local and national attention regarding recess. And of course, that wasn't new to us or specific to us. And so as a result, we had a number of parents in our district saying, we want it now. And it made us really look back and be introspective and saying, while we can't launch link K through 5 at all 15 elementaries immediately, we can have some kind of phase-in. And so we work with our SHAC committee, and our SHAC committee requested that we increase our recesses to a standard of a minimum of 30 minutes, and then working with them with the link data, we put that into two 15-minute increments, 15-minute recesses. And so that was different. And I'll tell you, I've had a little bit of pushback from one elementary school because the statement was that the kids had complained that they can't get their soccer games together when they only had 15 minutes to play. And we're really having to work with that staff to say this is not about one game or one soccer game or one group of kids, and maybe those kids need to do different things. And so it really impressed upon me that we need to do some work even with all those teachers of why it's two 15-minute recesses versus one 30-minute. And we've seen good results overall. That I'm giving one example of pushback, but overall it's gone very well, and having one before lunch and one after. In some cases, we had schools that were having a recess 30 minutes before the day got out, which was basically worthless. And so we've just had to kind of change how we do things, and it's been very good overall.
Thank you, Dr. Chadwell. This next question is very, it kind of goes along with what was just spoken about the older students. And although the question came in related to college students, I think this would be another good question to ask both of you related to the older students. So let me read the question, and then we'll kind of interpret it based on both high school and college students as the question was asked. Discussing the lack of play in our college students and their lack of intrinsic behavior and taking an initiative, is there any opportunity for the college student to develop and improve to healthier play qualities and behaviors? And so I think translating both college students and high school students, are there any opportunities to develop those strategies?
Well, I'll speak first to the college population. One of the things that we're doing now at TCU, and I would definitely invite it across the board, and I would say high schools could do similar things, is that we call them link breaks, but across campus, if we have 2-hour classes, we take breaks of 15 minutes unstructured outdoor between the hour and the 2-hour mark. So at, let's say at 50 minutes, we take a break until the 5 after the time, and then we have another 50 minutes before they leave. So these link breaks are starting to happen more and more across our campus, which is helping kids. I can't tell you how many kids are saying, oh my gosh, I'm going to walk a circle around the campus. And one particular story I'll tell is that I teach a stress management class in the summertime, and my stress management class is Monday through Friday, 8 to 10. And I told them on the first day, and y'all need to know this, that link breaks are unplugged, meaning you don't take your cell phones out there, you don't take your computers, iPads, or anything else. You really are unplugged to just be part of nature. And so these kids, I would say, we're going to go outside. You have to go outside, and you can do whatever you want, and then just be back in the classroom at this time. The first week, and maybe not even the whole week, they would go outside and sit on the stairs out at the front. And I said, you know, I'm going to go for a walk. I'll see y'all. I'll be back in the class at this time. By the end of that week, that first week, and into the second week, and I have them for 4 weeks, the end of the first week, first of the second week, they were actually out walking themselves, and they would go as far as they could go, and they'd start timing themselves, how far can I walk before I have to be back in the classroom. They became much more engaged just in a 4 to 5 day time period by making them start that way. I didn't even have to, yes, I gave some input in class on the importance of being outdoors and why it's so important with the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. I talked about an hour a day of sitting is worth 2 smoked cigarettes. I talk about those things, and I think that's something you should talk about with your high school kids. And then at that time, if you've got a block schedule, get them outside in your class time for 10 to 15 minutes to go out and be able to do what they want to do within reason. I mean, you know, you've got to tailor that a little different, but try to get them engaged And I think you'll see that they will within a short period of time.
All right. It's interesting that we're talking about something that seems so basic, but yet in many of the situations there is a lot of complexity to this. And so here's another question that kind of takes us into a little bit of a different direction. How was empathy measured in the study?
So the positive action curriculum that we do has a set of questions, 20 questions that deal with different character development pieces, and there are 6 different subscales. Empathy is one of them, bullying is one of them, trust, honesty, respect, they're all part of it. I could have gone on and on with different results, and there were many that were significant. But the way we do it in K through 2 kids is the teacher responds to each one of the children. In the grades 3 through 5, as we get there, the kids respond themselves. And the reason that the kids don't respond K through 2 is we tried it the first year where they responded, and they just like the happy face, so they'd answer happy for everything, even when it might say that I beat up on other kids. It doesn't say that, but I mean, even if it did, they just say a happy face because that was what they wanted to be. They just don't understand the questions well enough. So that's how we measure it, and we do it through something called Qualtrics. The teachers send in these responses per child, once in the fall, once in the spring, each year.
Thank you, Dr. Ray. This question is for Dr. Chadwell, related to expanding the school day. The question is, did you have to expand the school day to implement the recess?
No, that wasn't necessary. We were able to do everything within the normal school day that we had. We actually didn't have to adjust lunches or any structures. Being a large school district, we have a 3-tier bus system where elementary, middle, and high school, all those schools start at a specific time and fairly rigid in order to provide transportation, and we're able to do all this within the existing structures.
Thank you. I think one thing that we can all learn is physical activity outdoors is good for all of us. This is really an exciting time. We're hearing more and more about children being outside, even adults taking breaks to where they go and take walks. And so I think this is a really timely webinar. What we'd like to close our webinar out with is just some thank yous to Dr. Everett for partnering with us, for Dr. Ray and Dr. Chadwell sharing their expertise, and also to remind the audience to look for information about ongoing webinars such as this in the Friday Beat. We also would like people to take a look at the Tayford's annual convention. There's going to be some really good sessions related to physical activity, such as what we've heard today. There's actually going to be an Administrator's Day during the convention that we'd like to invite everybody to attend. And you can get that information through the website. Please let us know. We'll be happy to send it to you. We did have a few more additional questions, and what we'd like to propose that we do is get Dr. Ray and Dr. Chadwell to answer these questions, and then we can post them when we post the webinar on Dr. Ray's website. So we really want to thank everyone for attending this morning, and definitely this is a timely topic that we hope to present on in the future. Thank you for attending, and we hope to see you at our next webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you.